got to know them like I did last year when I had an invitation from the Japan-Australia Society to visit the country and meet again those that I had been in charge of in the camp. They came up from all parts of Japan, and I met at least 16 of them at a very nice afternoon tea party. I remember the old tailor who made over for me a man's overcoat into a perfectly fitting overcoat for me, a very small person really, made it beautifully. He remembered me and we had a great get-together. One very hot, dusty summer afternoon, I was taken by the Anglican padre in his car from, I think, Tatura station to the camp. The dust blew into the car and it was a very disagreeable drive. I didn't know what my duties were to be, and he talked about everything else but what I was supposed to be doing. I was ushered into a room where I saw 5 or 6 ladies in ordinary dress. One jovial-looking lady who welcomed me was just in a dressing gown, and I thought, my good gracious, what have I come to? Well, I had been on a visit to Japan, and I was very astonished to hear the little baby Japanese children say to me, "Hello," and "Bye-bye," and "How are you?" And I thought, here I am, a young teacher, and I haven't a second language. So I determined to take up a second language at least when I went back to Melbourne. At that time, I was very intrigued with learning languages such as Chinese. So I joined up the class in Little Burke Street with the young Chinese people and got to a stage when I was able to make a few minutes speech in very bad Chinese. And the ABC started a session in Japanese, and I began to listen in. To me, it was very easy because I had begun to learn the ideographs, which are the same in both Chinese and Japanese, but with different pronunciations. At the end of the year, I passed the little examination and then went on to the university at night, where we had a teacher, Mr. Inagaki, who gave us lessons in Japanese. I did the 5 years course in 4 years, and then the war struck. And with my little knowledge of Japanese, I offered my services to the Southern Command. This is a picture of a voluntary group of girls of which I had charge. We are training for the work in the Navy, the Morse Code group, and we were all very keen. I found sometimes the Morse Code made me go to sleep, but some of them were very keen and got jobs on the different ships in the Navy. We wardens were on the top of the hill, and the guards' quarters were not very far away. The camp itself was down on the flat, and the first morning I woke to the sound of a bugle and looked out of the window of my room. I saw about 100 young people on the ground being exercised by the commandant of the compound, a Japanese gentleman with a very loud, authoritative voice, and he was drilling them up, down, way, star, and they were putting all their strength and might into the exercise. This was about 5 o'clock in the morning. Later, after breakfast, I was told I must go round and visit each hut with my little orderly and ask how everybody in the huts were. I would say to them, "Ohayo gozaimasu, ikaga desu ka?" And they would reply in Japanese that mostly everything was well, nobody was sick. Then I would go in the hut and examine the surroundings to see if everything was clean and there was no hot water in a kerosene tin to keep them warm overnight. This was a practice which was very dangerous, and although the huts were cold and they must have felt very much sometimes, they were not allowed to have boiling water in kerosene tins covered with rugs in the hut. 1 or 2 bad accidents had already happened and people had been scalded. I was put in charge of one of the compounds. There were 4 compounds, A, B, C, and D, and I had charge of the non-English speaking Japanese. On going around the camp, I discovered that my late teacher, Mr. Inagaki, was one of the internees in my compound. He was a kindly soul, and I asked him if he would come up at night if I could get permission and give us further lessons in Japanese, to which he agreed at once. Some of the ladies in the workroom liked to make little toys and dolls, and they were kind enough to make these for me, just out of pieces of my old garments. The men made the stands, little wooden stands, and the ladies dressed the dolls. I was given charge of the school, and I ran a little school for the children every day. And gradually the school, the number of pupils grew too big, so I called in a very lovely Australian lady who was married to a Japanese gentleman, and she helped me with the younger ones. At the school there were some little Aborigine children whose parents had married Japanese, and there were little Japanese children whose parents were Japanese, and ordinary Australian children. Everyone in the camp had some relationship with Japanese people, and that is why they were there. In those days, the Japanese were called aliens, and of course the aliens didn't have the same rights as the native people. I would take the ladies and children on a picnic to the nearest weir, and the children would be so delighted to run round and pick up the quartz stones, thinking they would find gold in them. Someone had told them that quartz contained gold. They brought the stones to me in a very excited manner, and I have to this day some of the stones in my flower pots. They wandered a long way from where we were picnicking at times, and I used to be a little bit nervous that I couldn't get them back. So I asked for a whistle, a very shrill police whistle, if I could get one. But at those times, it was very difficult in those times to buy anything at all, and a whistle couldn't be obtained. But the word got round in the camp that I needed a whistle, and in a few minutes' time, one of the Japanese men brought me a whistle he'd made out of a jam tin with a dried pea inside to make the shrill sound. And this was just as good as any police whistle. I carried it with me and still have it in my home. We became closer and closer friends, and gradually we would think that life could go on forever in this peaceful part of the country where we had no disturbances except an occasional report of bad news from overseas. One day the seagulls came flying overhead, and a Japanese lady said to me, the war will soon be over. The seagulls have told us. I left the camp just a few months before the war actually ended and came to Melbourne. Then I heard that they were to be all repatriated on a certain day, and I went to the wharf with some gifts to see them off. I found, however, that no one was allowed on the wharf, and consequently we couldn't say goodbye just then. It went as far as New Guinea, Rabaul, and then they changed into a hospital ship, and those that were returning to Japan went back that way.
How was it decided which people went to Japan and which...
I really don't know how they decided. A few were allowed to stay and are still in Australia and are still great friends of mine.
No.